You've heard the expression, the law is an ass. Well, sometimes it's a crazy ass. In this video, I'm bringing you a mind-boggling bunch of rules that can only be described with one word: ridiculous. Historical laws, which will make you go, huh. Plus, things that sound made up but actually land people in hot water today. It's one wild journey. I'm Michael This25, and here are ridiculous laws from around the world. Back in 1909, Kelowna, Canada had a rather peculiar law about skinny dipping. It wasn't a blanket ban, oh no. Instead, nude bathing was only prohibited in Okanagan Lake, and only between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. So, early birds and night owls could take a dip in their birthday suit without any fear of legal repercussions. Thankfully, modern laws are more straightforward, making it clear that public nudity is a no-no, except in designated areas. Let's start, as we mean to go on, with a truly ridiculous law from Great Britain. Socks are a part of day-to-day life. I'm wearing socks right now. Not that you especially need to know that, but I'm making a point. It's just something I do every morning. Put on a pair of socks. Totally my choice. Or is it? Let's go back a few hundred years, and things are quite different. It was a brave person who appeared before Queen Elizabeth I in open-toed sandals. In fact, you were chancing it coming within 300 meters of the monarch minus some socks. As the 17th century began, James I took over and things started to cool down. More than can be said for your poor tootsies on a hot day when Lizzie was in town. That's right. In California, animals have been prohibited from publicly mating within 1,500 feet, that's roughly 450 meters, of any tavern, school, or church. What I'm curious about is how this regulation is enforced and why this would be an issue for any community or its local school children. I'm sure no Californian has ever been compelled to watch animals mate during church, and we couldn't discover any footage of any guards or regulators in charge of keeping said frisky animal couples from getting it on within 1,500 feet of a school. This law is entirely nonsensical and doesn't make any sense in any way, shape, or form. Are you packing for a Caribbean holiday? Or Caribbean, depending on how you pronounce it? Well, hold the camo. In many island havens like Jamaica, Barbados, Grenada, and the Bahamas, among others, sporting camouflage clothing is a big no-no. This seemingly harmless fashion choice can land you in hot water with hefty fines or even jail time. In these countries, camouflage is often associated with military personnel, or, unfortunately, criminal gangs. So, rocking your camo pants can be seen as disrespectful, or worse, a potential threat to public safety. While you may not give much thought to your taxi driver's feet and ankles, well, the city of Halifax certainly does. A local bylaw mandates that all cab drivers have to wear socks, even though their feet are rarely visible to passengers. It's a strange little stipulation in the law that might cause you to chuckle, but hey, at least you know those drivers are putting their best socked foot forward. What? Rats are vermin. I know they are kept as pets, however the reputation on the whole is a grim and dirty one. And I really feel sorry for the ones based in Montana. Why? Because you can only sell a rat to someone if they plan to feed it to something else or use it in a science experiment. Cruel? Yes. Though it seems there's a serious reason for the law. In 2019, it was reported that rats cost the US economy a staggering $19 billion per year. These little furry invaders cause chaos of all kinds, from spreading disease to damaging equipment. For instance, electrical wires are practical to you and me, but tasty looking to a hungry rodent. So while it appears ridiculous to buy a rat in order to give your beloved python a nice dinner, there is a method behind the madness. Laws against swearing, broader in scope than blasphemy, have existed since the US's early beginnings. Yes, sir, those pilgrims had their feet planted firmly in keeping things wholesome. Today, the federal government remains committed to its First Amendment stance, while local government rules vary considerably. They can include everything from complete speech protection to narrow, often bizarre laws that regulate certain words or phrases. One of our favorite for today's list, primarily for its futility, for obvious reasons, is the Massachusetts ban on swearing at a sporting event. Really, Red Sox fans are not allowed to swear at the visiting Yankees, and because the regulation is statewide and applies to all sporting events, informing your little cousin that they kicked ass in their baseball game is forbidden and punishable by a $50 fine. On the road, safety is paramount. Even more so on motorcycles or bicycles, where there is little to no protection around your body in case of a collision. The officials in Mexico agree, so pedaling without both of your feet on a bicycle can result in a criminal charge. It may seem silly in the modern era with specialized hydraulic action brakes, mainly since this rule dates back to the 1800s when a collision between a carriage and a cyclist spurred the law into action, but there is indeed a method to the madness. Mexico's streets can be bustling and unpredictable, so having both feet firmly planted on the pedals can give you excellent and instant braking control, especially in crowded areas or uneven terrain. It's human nature to embellish a story or two, but in Washington state there's one tall tale you can't tell, claiming that your parents are loaded. The legislation was enacted to stop fraudulent activities like securing loans under false pretenses. So if you're thinking about name-dropping your fictional multi-millionaire parents, think again. Now, if you thought that was bizarre, you should know that misrepresentation takes a decidedly more colorful turn in Kentucky. Here, it's illegal to dye a duckling blue and offer it for sale unless you have more than 6 available. For some reason, the state has to protect people against buying novelty-colored poultry. Have you ever felt there should be a law against the iconic children's character Winnie the Pooh? No? Yeah, me either. Over in Poland, however, they feel a little differently. This was based on an incident involving a playground and a distinct lack of underwear. Not only does the honey-loving little bear go commando for his adventures, he also attracted attention in the town of Tushin for not having any genitalia. The matter was raised during a private discussion among officials that leaked to the media. The officials were trying to decide whether Pooh would make a good mascot for a public playground. They ultimately ruled him out from mascot duties based on his bottomless appearance. Yeah, that's right. A fictional bear. Now, we're not saying this became part of the Constitution or anything, but it's an interesting case of how binding and ridiculous decisions are made at a local level. Are you planning a holiday to Cinque Terre, the Italian beach resort, next summer? Well, remember to pack your hiking boots. Local rescue squads have grown increasingly fed up with saving unprepared tourists. Many visitors take a stroll between the seashore towns, not realizing that the pathways between the villages are rugged mountain treks. Plenty of visitors have had to be rescued after being stranded on the rocky goat tracks while wearing flimsy summer footwear. In an effort to instill a bit of common sense, the local National Park Administration began charging serious fines to anyone spotted on the trails without adequate footwear. Yeah, that's right. Wearing flip-flops in some regions of the popular coastal town will result in a $4,000 education fee. These ones have bottle openers. So, I like my reefs. This video is not brought to you by Reefs. Or is it just Reef? It's just Reef, but these are a pair of Reefs. Still not brought to you by them. While rocking your favorite pair of flip-flops in Spain is perfectly legal, wearing them while driving could land you in trouble. The Guardia Civil has made it clear. Driving with footwear that hinders your control of the pedals is a no-go. This means your trusty flip-flops, with their tendency to slip and slide, might not be the best choice when you take on the Spanish roads. Sorry, guys. Although I need a new pair anyway. Look how thin that's gotten. These are getting old. Bye. In some parts of New Mexico, chivalry isn't dead. It's the hardly enforced law. Believe it or not, there are places where it's technically illegal for women to pump their own gas or change a flat tire. This long-forgotten law, a relic of bygone gender roles, gives us a glimpse into a time when ladies were seen as damsels in distress and had to be rescued, even at gas pumps. Various places across the globe are known for their loving and respectful attitude towards dogs. Does that kindly attitude go overboard in some situations? Yeah, it certainly does. In the city of Turin, Italy, you can incur a fine of $650 for not walking your precious pooch. Now, that's actually something I'm on board with. Keeping a dog cooped up in a house all day is terrible, and getting them out and about for some exercise and fresh air on a daily basis is vital. Several $100 is a little steep, but hey, animals are people too. Turin takes this idea a little too far, however, by insisting you do it at least 3 times a day. I can't throw sticks and pick up poop all that time. I have videos to host. Even Rover would find this idea ridiculous, I'm sure. A bar is one of the most likely places to get drunk. So it's ironic that Alaska enacted legislation banning people from getting drunk in bars. The regulation was enacted after the state government discovered that drunks cause the vast majority of crimes in Alaska. Who would have thought? Alaskan cops started implementing the law in 2012. Plainclothes officers went to various establishments looking for inebriated customers. They contacted other officers to conduct the arrest when they believed someone was drunk. Bartenders weren't spared, as they could be prosecuted for supplying alcohol to intoxicated customers. Because there was no way to prove that a person was in fact drunk, cops only arrested those who were throwing up, falling off stools, or being a nuisance. Did you know that belting out your best beach tunes while wearing a swimsuit is technically not allowed here in the Sunshine State? This eccentric law, likely intended to maintain public decorum in earlier times, still exists in the books. However, it's rarely enforced, so feel free to let your inner Adele loose, regardless of your swimwear. Just be mindful of your fellow sunbathers' ears. In Honduras, naming your child might soon require a bit more legal consideration. The government is proposing a ban on extravagant or offensive names to shield children from potential ridicule. The law could even allow kids to sue their parents for giving them their embarrassing monikers. So if you're a soon-to-be Honduran parent, you might want to think twice before naming your child Llanta de Milagro or Bujia, as those names might soon land you in legal hot water. I mentioned royalty and socks a little earlier, a strange little law that was thankfully repealed a few hundred years back. Of course, with such a long-standing institution as the British monarchy, you'll find some outdated rules are still on the books in the 21st century. Can you believe that if a whale washes up on the shoreline, it's technically the property of the crown? You are obligated to tell the king about this unfortunate sea creature in case they want to come down and pick it up. And things get weirder when it comes to fish, specifically a sturgeon. You might not think the king owns the water, but you'd pretty much be wrong. His influence extends to any sturgeon caught within his borders. I can see him maybe wanting to accept a juicy fish, but a beached whale? What would he do with that? Let us know in the comments. And if all this talk of catching fish has made you hungry, I have just the thing. A rundown of how food and ridiculous laws come together. Proceed with caution, though. It might give you indigestion. I'm not so sure how I feel about the following bit of legislation, but it probably sucks to be French. In 2011, French students were bitterly disappointed when they discovered that a law had been enacted that specified that sauces, such as ketchup, mayonnaise, and the like, could only be served with specific dishes. It wouldn't be available freely anymore. So while the kids could have ketchup with their French fries, it wouldn't be available for other dishes. News outlets jumped on the news, and different stories were published. Some reported that ketchup had been banned in its entirety. According to some, the saucy legislation was intended to improve the general nutritional quality of students' meals. However, many maintained that the French government banned ketchup in order to promote the nation's traditional French dishes and culture. Sacre bleu. Although, if you ever go to Epcot and you need, the World Showcase doesn't open till 11. That's 2 ones. That's why I did that. That's 11. It's not 2. It's 2. Doesn't open till 11. However, La Pâtisserie Boulangerie and the back of the French Pavilion is open for breakfast. So there's your French tip. Fantastic pastries. I've always been a little afraid of cacti. They're prickly and imposing, and often can be found precisely where they shouldn't be. As much as one may be tempted to hack down the prickly green foe, if you're in Arizona, maybe you should check what species of cacti has wronged you. Because if the cactus you have just hacked down happens to be a saguaro cactus, it can land you in prison for up to 25 years. These iconic desert residents are legally protected. Even landowners considering their removal must face a mandatory process. Before you even think of swinging that axe, you must contact the Arizona Department of Agriculture and obtain a permit, complete with proper tagging of the cactus. This isn't just because the saguaro happens to be some higher-up's favorite cactus. Saguaro cacti are incredibly slow growing, taking centuries to mature. They're considered vital components of the Arizona landscape, so massacring the cactus won't be taken lightly. Dreaming of a Cuban getaway? Well, be sure to check the fine print before you decide to crash on your friend's couch. While Cuba welcomes visitors with open arms, staying in private homes comes with a few rules. If your pal's place isn't a registered casa particular, then you need a special permit. So double check your paperwork to avoid any unexpected hiccups if you find yourself on your tropical adventure. Fried chicken needs to be eaten with your hands. It's one of those facts of life that just can't be denied. That said, not everyone wants greasy fingers. In which case, they better not do their eating in the city of Gainesville, Georgia, where apparently you're banned by law from consuming chicken with utensils. This strange draconian rule is in support of the city's status as the poultry capital of the world. Chickens really do lay golden eggs in Georgia, with the breeding of these feathered friends bringing in $1 billion plus to the state economy every year. Now, I'm not sure what the punishment would be for someone caught in Gainesville eating fried chicken with a fork. I'm guessing they're made to lick the fingers of everyone in the vicinity. Oh, I even grossed myself out with that idea. Oh boy. Maybe you know what they do. Let us know in the comments. In December 2010, an unidentified 13-year-old pupil at Roosevelt Middle School in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, was placed under citizen's arrest by a teacher, Miss Daylin Woodside, after he wrote on a piece of paper with a permanent marker and it flowed onto his desk. Miss Woodside alleged that the unidentified boy actually used the marker to write on his desk. Does that sound crazy? Well, maybe it was. We can't speak for Miss Woodside. You see, the boy's arrest had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he scribbled on his desk with a marker. The issue was the marker. Oklahoma City Ordinance 35-202 makes it illegal to possess a permanent marker, or spray paint for that matter, on private property unless you have permission. The rule was enacted to discourage graffiti artists from putting graffiti on private property. Still, I think it was a tad excessive to arrest a 13-year-old over it. Over that. Come get me, Oklahoma. I'm on a private property right now, although I'm not in Oklahoma, so. There are very specific rules licensed nonprofit agencies must adhere to when it comes to North Carolina bingo. Firstly, bingo nights can only happen twice a week, so that players and organizers have time to catch their breath and prepare for the next round. Second, there is a 48-hour cooldown between sessions. And lastly, games are not allowed to last longer than 5 hours. Metal-studded tires are usually reserved for icy roads or muddy trails, which makes it a bit weird that some rebellious drivers apparently decided to bring their off-road fantasies to the Caribbean. Perhaps they craved the aggressive growl of their tires against the pavement, or maybe they were just really nostalgic for their winter rally days. Whatever the reason, their antics clearly got on the government's nerves, leading to a ban on the pavement shredding tires. A pickle is apparently not fit to eat if you throw it down and it doesn't bounce. No, you're not hallucinating. This is an actual and legal system that was established in Connecticut to work out whether pickles were any good or not. The legend goes that two workers, Sidney Spearer and Moses Dexler, were busted selling substandard pickles in 1948. According to research undertaken by the state library, one Frederick Holcomb, the state's Food and Drug Commissioner, declared that bouncing a pickle was a great way of showing whether it was fresh and tasty. A $500 fine followed for the criminal pickle salesman. What happened to the pickles? That's best not to talk about that. This item on our list may seem insignificant to anyone under 40, hey, but at a certain point in your life, you're all grown up, with a family of your own and a schedule that often makes you wish you were back in school again. When you get to that point, remember that you would have had a younger mom or dad to take care of you, and that it's probably your turn to return the favor. If you're lucky enough, they're still around. This item on our list is bizarre because a law must be made out of it. China created the Elderly Rights Law in 2013, requiring adults to visit their older parents, quote, on a regular basis. There is no clarity on what often means, but if the kids don't comply, the court may order them to visit their parents a specific amount of times each month. Just visit your parents, people. We shouldn't need laws to tell us to do so. I haven't seen my mom in a couple months. I'm seeing her for Thanksgiving. Oh, and her birthday. Oh, her birthday's coming up. Happy birthday, Mom. In the picturesque paradise of Capri, failing to scoop up after your pooch carries a hefty price tag, both figuratively and literally. To combat the unwelcome gifts left by some canine companions, the island has implemented a strict rule. Clean up or face a €2,000, $2,400 fine, and potentially a DNA test for your dog. This no-nonsense approach keeps Capri, famous for its pristine streets and stunning views, spotless for both tourists and residents. Have you ever wondered what it's like to have your country's anthem blasted in your living room twice a day? Well, I guess that depends on who's singing it. Some voices might make you want to change the channel. But in Colombia, it's not just a patriotic tradition, it's the law. At 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. every day, public radio and television stations must play the national anthem. If anything, it's a unique way to start and end your day. Whether you're sipping your morning coffee or winding down after work, you can count on hearing those familiar notes reminding you of the Colombian spirit. Pizza is delicious, and surprise pizza is even better. Let's say there's a knock at the door and there's a delivery person holding a freshly made pizza. Who sent this treat to your doorstep? Do you care? I wouldn't. Just give me that melted cheese and extra toppings. However, in the state of Louisiana, they not only discourage you from sending someone a pizza out of the blue, they punish them. I should add some more detail here. You see, it's a little more complicated than that. For one thing, the law seems to be protecting innocent folk from being harassed. That may sound ridiculous. I mean, how could pizza be a problem? Well, how about if the person who sent it expects you to pay for it? That's just rude. Still, when the mischief maker faces a fine of $500 and 6 months behind bars, you've got to wonder if this law is sensible. Let's move on from stuffed crusts to just being plain stuffed. A marriage is a legal minefield when it goes sour. A string of costly divorce settlements tell us that. But there's a whole bowl full of nightmares when you're bound in holy matrimony too, as our next section shows us. Several towns in various countries have either permanently or temporarily prohibited citizens from dying within their town limits. The mayor of Falciano de Masico, Italy, barred residents from dying within town limits in 2012. The mayor announced the ban after the local graveyard became full. People would only be allowed to die within town limits once a new cemetery had been established. During the time the law was in effect, at least 2 people died. How dare they? The same thing happened in the town of Bordeaux, France. Pretty ridiculous, I know. Longyearbyen, Norway, has had a permanent ban on death in place since 1950. The village is considered the world's northernmost city, with more than 1,000 residents, and is buried in permafrost. The restriction was enacted after villagers realized that the deceased merely froze in the cemetery rather than decomposing. This meant that deadly diseases could survive in the bodies and possibly reinfect the living. Old and sickly persons are frequently taken off the island to spend their last days elsewhere. In Oshawa, Canada, scaling city trees is a definite no-no. This strange law isn't meant to stifle long-limbed ambitions, but to protect the safety of Oshawa's residents. While visions of city officials chasing spandex-clad climbers might be chuckle-worthy, the concern is real. Tree climbing accidents happen, and Oshawa takes its citizens' well-being seriously. They just want to prevent injuries and preserve the city's greenery. So, good for you, Canada. I wish my state cared for my safety and didn't prevent me from singing in my swim trunks. If you're a man living in or traveling in Sudan, sporting a touch of eyeliner or a dab of foundation could land you in hot water. In fact, it's actually illegal for men to wear makeup and for women to apply it to them. The law is rooted in the nation's Islamic principles and is in place to maintain traditional gender roles and modesty standards. So, if you're traveling to Sudan, rather leave your makeup bag at home and embrace the natural look. The relationship between men and women has thankfully become more equal over the centuries. That said, it only takes a ridiculous law or two to remind us there's still a way to go. In the state of Vermont, a wife may find it tricky obtaining new chompers without permission in writing from her husband. This is apparently still a thing today, meaning that the legal system can truly take a bite out of you if you try and go it alone. In Fairbanks, Alaska, it is against the law for a moose to enter a restaurant or bar through the sidewalk. The interesting piece of legislation came about early in the 20th century because a saloon owner loved to get his pet moose drunk. Who doesn't? The inebriated moose repeatedly went on rampages and destroyed people's property. Oh! Officials eventually had enough and enacted a law banning moose from walking on public sidewalks, which meant that the moose in question could no longer enter the man's saloon. That stopped the saloon owner from bringing his moose to work, but the poor animal would still be served alcohol at home. We're not sure why they couldn't just make it illegal to, get your moose drunk, but hey, it was different times back then. Don't give alcohol to your animals. That shouldn't need saying. Have you ever shared a Netflix password? Well, in Tennessee, that simple act of charity could land you in a lot of trouble. The Tennessee login law, tucked away under an updated cable TV theft statute, makes distributing login information for online services like Netflix and iTunes a crime. Passing your password to friends, family, or even neighbors who always ask for recommendations becomes a potential misdemeanor, punishable by a hefty $2,500 fine and up to a year in jail. While the law originally targeted commercial piracy, its application to personal password sharing remains to be seen and is untested in court. In India, even harming the smallest creature can have serious consequences. The law states that anyone who maims or kills an animal worth more than 10 rupees, that's about 12 US cents, could face jail time or a hefty fine. You may find this surprising, but it reflects India's deep-rooted respect for all living beings, regardless of their monetary value. So whether it's a stray dog or a pigeon pecking at your leftovers, think twice before swatting them away. Redressing the balance slightly, if you're a married couple in the island country of Samoa, dates are important. Birthdays usually mean fun and laughter. However, if you do that classic husband thing of forgetting the big day, you may find yourself in trouble with the law. No, honey, I got your present, it just hasn't arrived yet here. Samoan authorities hold you to these sacred vows. And if you keep being forgetful, you might even wind up in jail. If you have a potty mouth, then you know it, clap your hands. No, actually, if you have a potty mouth and you know it, don't visit the Caribbean. In fact, I straight up recommend that you keep any sailor talk in your home country. St. Kitts, popularly known as St. Christopher Island, has stringent laws against using profanity in public, and failure to comply can result in arrest. That's what happened to rapper 50 Cent in 2016 when he let a curse word slip during a concert. Take note, these cops are not to be trifled with. Navigating life as an unmarried Qatari woman under 30 can be an obstacle course of restrictions. They're not allowed to check into hotels, travel plans hinge on a male guardian's approval, and the freedom to move about can be taken away by their father, whether they like it or not. This web of limitations, often underpinned by tradition and religion, paints a stark picture of gender inequality. Even the choice to be a mother becomes subject to legal scrutiny, with unmarried women facing prosecution when it comes to extracurricular relations. How would you feel about offering a moose a cold one? Well, in Fairbanks, Alaska, that's a big no-no. Legend has it that a local bar owner's pet moose developed a taste for beer, courtesy of generous patrons. However, the sight of a tipsy moose stumbling through the streets wasn't exactly a hit with the mayor, who promptly had the city council pass a law to nip this boozy behavior in the bud. So never, ever share your brew with a Fairbanks Bullwinkle, or you could find yourself in illegal moose hap. Sadly, it's bad news for women again with this next ridiculous law, which hails from Bolivia. In a rule so regressive you could cover it in furs, hand it to a club, and call it a caveman, a married female isn't technically allowed more than one tipple during a night out. Amazingly, it appears a lady can't be trusted to compose herself and behave properly under the influence of alcohol, whereas a man, of course, sprout wing and wear a halo after a night out at the bar. You haven't seen anything yet when it comes to a country's bizarre rules and regs. Time for some absolutely ridiculous laws, some of which will really surprise you. After that, I'm going from the ridiculous to the really ridiculous for the last few entries on our list. Although Japan has no obesity problem, the government opted to take a proactive approach to the benefits of keeping a healthy weight. As a result, Japan forbade its citizens from being overweight in 2008. All citizens over 40 are required by the Metabo law to have their waistline measurements taken every year. Anyone found to be overweight receives 3 months to lose the excess weight. Following that, they are subjected to mandatory nutritional advice and guidance, followed by 6 months of re-education if they do not make adequate progress. Employers are responsible for ensuring that their employees participate in the scheme or face fines of up to $19 million. So far, the Metabo scheme has reduced obesity by 3.5%, which is outstanding in a country with already low obesity levels. Although I went there when I was fat, so they allow you to be fat, you just can't be Japanese and fat. Although I was under 40, I still am, but this was 2019, so. I know the title says shocking laws that are in effect, not ones that almost came into effect, but this one was just too good not to be added to today's list. The Malawian air fouling legislation of 2011 was an attempt to promote public decency by prohibiting fouling the air. The Minister of Justice at the time, Rafael Kasambara, fueled the fire by stating that the law indeed included flatulence. His statement quickly went viral, with headlines like "Malawi to ban farting in public" and "Don't drop the F-bomb in Malawi," gracing news outlets worldwide. Although he later retracted his claim, the local court's bill, including the air fouling clause, failed to be enacted. It faced criticism for being vague and unenforceable, and all the international mockery likely played a role in its demise. Thailand, the land of smiles. And mandatory underwear? It's true. While you won't find any underwear/fashion police patrolling the streets, going commando in the Land of Smiles is technically illegal. So whether you're island hopping or temple exploring, make sure your undergarments are up to code. And if not, we don't want to know about it, please. I don't think it's controversial to say that when a country goes to the polls for an election, there will be a variety of people casting their vote, some of whom may be suffering from mental health issues. Does that give a state the right to bar people from exercising a democratic right? That sounds way out of line. In New Mexico, people deemed to be idiots by authorities were denied the opportunity to choose who would govern them. This outdated attitude discriminated against those who surely needed a voice in society more than anyone. Things were so ingrained that it took until 2016 for the law to be amended. It also enabled people who'd served prison sentences to regain their voting rights and not be stigmatized for their previous lives as lawbreakers. The historic parts of Greece, that is. High heels are not permitted at several ancient sites because they may cause damage to the site. According to NPR, food and drink were also prohibited when maintenance workers discovered over 60 pounds of gum, that's over 27 kilograms, under the seats of a theater that was erected in 161 CE. The freedom to wear heels isn't exactly terrifying, but some rights around the world are still not universal. Although this one is bizarre, it definitely makes sense. In Pakistan, riding a motorcycle with a friend can get you arrested on certain public holidays. Even though exact dates, holidays, and protocols may differ, the two key factors driving these restrictions remain the same: public safety and cultural norms. Roughly 70% of motorized two-wheeled vehicles in Pakistan are motorcycles. With such a huge portion of the population relying on this particular mode of transportation, regulations, such as the holiday double rider ban, seek to ensure the safety and comfort of all road users during periods of such increased cultural significance. In New Zealand, pirating movies and music won't get you in hot water with the authorities, unless you tick off the copyright holders. Unlike most countries where it's the police who will come knocking, in New Zealand, the angry artists and studios get to chase you down. And while there's no longer a 3 strikes rule, they can and will still take legal action if they catch you downloading their content illegally. Just stick to legal streaming services instead. Nobody needs to be a pirate in this day and age. And speaking of bizarre, you know what else is bizarre? The fact that you haven't liked, shared, commented, or subscribed yet, so go ahead and do that. It really helps the channel so we can keep making videos just like this. Also, don't forget to check out our socials. In the state of Nebraska, your medical history can actually prevent you from getting married. How ridiculous is that? The nature of this law is quite specific and refers to the catching of STDs, or as the authorities put it, venereal disease, which sounds pretty old-fashioned. Either way, the punishment is harsh, meaning that even if you knew about your partner's issue and wanted to exchange vows, you couldn't. Love clearly can't conquer all here. In 2020, it was reported that attempts were being made to alter this rule, which dates back to approximately the 1940s. On a more positive note, it doesn't appear to have been enforced. Quite how you do that in the first place is a mystery. One I don't really want to think about too much, honestly. If you've never been to Barcelona, now might be a good time to book your trip. It's famous for its football team, architecture, lively nightlife, golden beaches, and amazing food. Not to mention a booming cultural history and bustling community festivals that draw tourists from just about every corner of the world. However, should you ever visit the culture-rich city, remember not to leave the beach in your swimwear. Your swimming attire is not allowed on the streets of this Spanish city, no matter how cute or colorful it is. If you want to leave the beach or promenade, cover yourself or change out of your bathing suit. Trust me on this one. Forgetting to do so will result in a considerable blow to your wallet. And also, before I continue, it should totally be a law for you all to smash that subscribe button and notification bell, because a bunch of you who watch aren't subscribed. And you know what? If you like what we do and you want to see more, just please subscribe and hit that bell so you can see all of our new videos. It would really mean a lot, helps the algorithm, helps us bring more content to you. So, thank you so much. Monaco's own citizens are indeed barred from the very activity that built the principality's fortune: gambling. The rule dates back to the 19th century, a clever strategy implemented by the royal family to address 2 pressing concerns. Firstly, with coffers running dry, Monaco needed to transform itself into a playground for the world's wealthy, enticing them with lavish casinos and tax-free havens. But secondly, the royals also wanted to protect their own citizens from the potential perils of gambling. Thus, a two-tiered system arose. Monaco became a gambling paradise for foreigners, while its own residents were subtly discouraged from partaking. In Bolivia, married women are legally limited to just one glass of wine in public. Apparently, the powers that be believe a second glass might unleash your inner flirt, or something like that. Now, while this antiquated rule is never enforced, it's a stark reminder of the lingering gender inequalities in some parts of the world. Inequalities that definitely wouldn't fly here in the US. But I do believe that if a Bolivian husband were to remind his wife of this law after just one glass of wine, well, it might just be their last anniversary dinner together. Water pistols have been the cause of hijinks for as long as I can remember. Not that everyone on the planet thinks they're so fun. And one person whose opinion certainly matters is former Prime Minister of Cambodia, Hun Sen. He reacted with force to an incident in 2023 where a tourist caught up in a water fight suffered a blast to her right eye during Cambodian New Year's, otherwise known as Sankranta. Hun Sen proposed outlawing the guns, though he stood down as premier the same year. Luckily, his son Hun Manet took over, so it looks like this particular demand passed into law. Other sources state that water pistols are not welcome in the capital Siem Reap during the new year. The government poured cold water all over people's fun. But as long as they don't put that water in a gun, it's all legal. Thailand's lèse majesté laws prohibits anyone from slandering the Thai royal family. The law is highly controversial in Thailand, where it's been used to persecute political opponents. However, it becomes even more controversial when we consider that the king's dog is viewed as a member of the royal family, and those who insult the dog can face legal action. In 2015, a Thai man faced up to 37 years in prison in a closed court for making humorous remarks about the king's dog. The dog in question was a mongrel named Thong Dang, or Copper, the favorite of the late king. Thanakorn Siripaibon, the accused, allegedly criticized Copper, King Bhumipol, and an ongoing military corruption trial on Facebook. Nobody knows what Thanakorn said about Copper, since repeating it would be perpetrating the crime again. Because of Thailand's censorship laws, journalists could not print whatever Thanakorn allegedly shared. In fact, the international edition of the New York Times distributed in Thailand left the space where the alleged insult was meant to be printed blank. Patriotism takes on a literal form in Chile every year on Independence Day, September 18th and 19th. The law mandates that every private and public building display the national flag as a symbol of pride. This year, authorities are reminding citizens of this tradition, emphasizing that neglecting to fly the flag can result in fines ranging from 40,000 to 400,000 Chilean pesos, approximately 45 to 450 US dollars, depending on the severity of the offense. Uruguay, a trailblazing nation in public health, is the first country in Latin America to ban smoking in all indoor spaces. Implemented in 2006, this groundbreaking law covers everything from bustling bars and cozy restaurants to even private workplaces. While it might be a bummer for smokers, it's a major victory for public health, protecting everyone from the dangers of secondhand smoke. And let's not forget the added bonus: no more lingering smoky smell clinging to your clothes, hair, and skin. According to an Australian law which dates back to the 1950s, people who live in Victoria face years behind bars for getting mixed up with pirates. So far, so understandable. It's not like pirates haven't been prosecuted for the past few hundred years. Help a pirate with their business and it's guaranteed you'll wind up in bars. Here comes the ridiculous part though. Victoria law states you could face jail time for corresponding with a modern-day Bluebeard or Captain Jack Sparrow. He might call it a rum situation. Or maybe I should walk the plank for that joke. This law is fascinating because it's so incredibly specific. In the Philippines, cars with license plates ending in a 1 or a 2 are not permitted on the highways on Monday. If it ends on 3 or 4, you can't be on the highways on Tuesday. If it ends on 5 or 6, well, Wednesday. 7 or 8, Thursday. And if it ends on 9 or 0, you are not allowed to be on the highway on Friday. We have yet to learn what motivated the creation of this law, let alone how it's managed or enforced. Its logic is related to some sort of identification and status mechanism, but the law is so complex and irrelevant that it's impossible to do in-depth research on it. Forget shaking salt on your fries in Montevideo. Uruguay's capital city has declared war on sodium. In a bid to tackle soaring hypertension rates, almost 40% of the population, authorities have implemented a unique law. banning table salt and salty condiments like ketchup and mayonnaise from restaurants. Restaurants have to comply with the guidelines, offering low sodium alternatives and menu warnings about high salt options. Whether this condiment crackdown proves effective remains to be seen. Buenos Aires might be known for its passionate tango, but featherbeds are strictly off limits. The fluffy sleep havens are actually 100% illegal in the city thanks to lawmakers who feared they might lead to inappropriate activities. Go figure. So while you can still cuddle up with your sweetheart in Buenos Aires, you'll have to do it on a regular mattress. When times are tough, people have to sell their precious possessions. And it's heartbreaking to imagine someone needing to offer an artificial limb or even their wheelchair because they're so hard up. Delaware takes a tough approach to any potential business in this area by imposing a $10,000 penalty for pawnbrokers who might be considering a prosthetic by way of payment. While this sounds ridiculous at first, I can see where they're coming from. The law here doesn't exactly help an individual wanting to make some fast cash from their equipment, but at least they aren't struggling to get around because they can't afford it. Managing to keep your WTF-ometer in check so far? Well, wait till you see what's coming up for the last part of our video. Number 1 is going to bend your mind into a pretzel, as Jerry Seinfeld once said. There are plenty of things you are forbidden from doing in Italy. For example, low-cut jeans, miniskirts, and tops showing too much cleavage have been banned in some towns and cities. Nuts, there goes my entire outfit. Swearing and lying on park benches, even climbing trees could end in a fine. In Rome, you're not allowed to eat on the street, kiss somebody inside a car, or exercise your dog on anything but a short leash. One of the most bizarre laws in Italy, though, can be found in Eraclea, near Venice, where it's prohibited to build sandcastles on the beach. The reason? According to the Italians, they cause an obstruction. A lonely sandcastle on an enormous beach. What can I say? Safety comes first. In the bicycle kingdom of the Netherlands, keeping your head safe is a personal choice. But neglecting your bike's light and bell is a surefire way to land in hot water. This eccentric law might seem illogical compared to countries prioritizing personal safety, but it reflects the Dutch philosophy of encouraging responsible cycling. I should also mention that the optional helmet rule doesn't mean the Dutch are reckless daredevils. Studies suggest their low accident rates stem from factors like excellent cycling infrastructure, comprehensive education from an early age, and a general emphasis on shared responsibility between cyclists and other road users. Are you lucky enough to be heading to the Maldives? Well, you should know that it might be better to leave your beach reads at home, unless they're strictly non-religious. This island paradise strictly forbids bringing anything considered contrary to Islam, which includes Bibles and other religious books. So while you can soak up the sun and enjoy the stunning scenery, you might want to swap that spiritual reading for a romance novel, horror, or a thrilling mystery. Let the insanity begin. Now, I don't know if you're a religious person, but there's one thing you probably shouldn't do as a devout follower of the faith, and that's walk into a church wearing a fake mustache. Why you would need to do that is anybody's guess, but clearly someone has, because in Alabama there is a law relating to this situation. Adding an extra layer of the craziness to proceedings is the fact that you will get in trouble if it makes people laugh. This suggests that if you went in there with a really convincing fake and no one noticed, then you'd get away with the perfect crime. This item on today's list just rubbed us the wrong way. Women all across the world face unacceptably high rates of gender-based violence, which may encompass sexual assault, harassment, and abuse. According to RAINN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, 1 in every 6 women in the US has survived an attempted or completed rape. Every year, 17 to 32,000 rape-related pregnancies occur in the United States. While it seems logical that a rapist should not be allowed to claim parental rights over a child born due to rape, well, the law varies by state. At present, 25 states require a criminal rape conviction to terminate a parent's rights. In other words, the court must be presented with clear and convincing evidence that a child was conceived due to rape. However, in Minnesota, there is no legal provision that limits or terminates a rapist's legal right to parent a child. Longyearbyen, a remote Norwegian town in the Arctic, holds a curious distinction. It's technically illegal to die there. While this might sound like something out of a macabre fairy tale, the reason behind it is surprisingly practical. The permafrost, permanently frozen ground, makes traditional burials impossible. Digging graves is a monumental task, And even then, bodies wouldn't decompose in the freezing temperatures, potentially creating environmental concerns. As such, when illness knocks on the door, residents of Longyearbyen embark on a journey over 2,000 kilometers away to the Norwegian mainland to get vital medical care and to be able to make appropriate final arrangements, respecting the limitations of Longyearbyen's environment. In South Africa, owning a TV isn't as simple as plugging it in and grabbing the remote. Nope, you gotta get a license first. That's right, before you can binge watch your favorite shows, you need to show the government some love and pay up for the privilege. Now, I've got it on good authority that most South Africans find ways to get around this particular bit of legislation, but it's a fact that those who get caught can face fines or even jail time for unlicensed viewing. If you live here in Florida, and you're a man, and you enjoy wearing women's clothing, then you might want to pay attention to this next part. You can flaunt your fashion sense in any way you please, it seems, except one. The stickler is that you mustn't wear a strapless dress. Yes, the male shoulder is clearly deemed to be offensive enough to warrant a thin layer of material being hung over it at all times. That's going to play havoc with your tan lines. Not that I know about that. One of the poorest countries in the world, Swaziland, has an average life expectancy of 30 to 35 years. The people are oppressed by a corrupt governmental control and a tyrannical and power-hungry king, although you should read dictator, the present one being King Mswati III, who has taken upon himself to implement several bizarre regulations in an attempt to re-establish traditional values. In effect, this means that Swazi girls are regarded as inferior to their male counterparts, and as a result, women are not permitted to wear attire that resembles menswear. Should they be found wearing pants in public, they risk it being pulled off and being humiliated by soldiers. Miniskirts aren't allowed either, as it's indecent and provokes rape. Sweden's nightlife comes with an unexpected snag. Dancing freely in pubs and bars isn't allowed. A relic of the 1970s, a dance permit remains obligatory if an establishment wants to host dancing customers. The law's application raises eyebrows. It doesn't apply to tourists, which can confuse regulations. Apart from that, calls for its abolishment are gaining momentum. Proponents argue the system is unnecessarily bureaucratic and stifles nightlife. So, while celebrating with a spontaneous jig in a Swedish pub might seem harmless, it's advisable to inquire about the establishment's dance permit status before you get too carried away. In most countries, you'll find some version of income taxes, property taxes, and even sales taxes. And then there's Finland's candy taxes. That's right, this Nordic nation actually taxed all things sweet, from chocolate bars to gummy bears. However, the Finnish sweet tooth refused to be tamed, as the tax was eventually scrapped in 2017 after a sugary revolt. Today, visitors can indulge in Finnish candies without any extra cost, but it just goes to show that even the most well-intentioned policies can sometimes be a little too hard to swallow. It's generally accepted that when settling down for a night of you know what with your special friend, you often leave the lights on. Depending on who you're with, you might want the lights to be off, but I'm not here to judge. Anyway, if that's your thing, you'll enjoy Budapest. There, you're not permitted to see what you're doing while spending quality time with your spouse or partner. It's the ultimate case of lights out and a logistical nightmare to boot. Okay, this video is becoming a little adult-oriented. Time to move into PG-13 territory. Though that's no reason to be disappointed and click away, we have a shed load of wild stuff to show you yet. In an important move to the institutionalized reincarnation management, the Chinese government banned Buddhists from reincarnating without written authorization in 2007. When the present Dalai Lama dies, the law could allow the Chinese a say in the future reincarnation of the most important living Buddha. According to tradition, the Buddhist leader, now in his 80s, will be reborn to help humankind. Nonetheless, the Chinese government is determined to be entangled in choosing the next Dalai Lama, and as a result, in how he plans to serve humanity. Because His Holiness Tenzin Gyatso has become such a thorn in their side, this is particularly important to the Chinese authorities. The Dalai Lama has remarked that he will not reincarnate in Tibet as long as China controls the region. However, nothing prevents him from reincarnating anywhere else. He could opt to reincarnate somewhere other than Tibet, or just across the border. In Finland, purchasing alcoholic beverages is strongly regulated according to time restrictions. From 9 a.m. until 9 p.m., kiosks and supermarkets, as well as other retail outlets, are freely allowed to sell their alcoholic goods. However, as soon as that clock strikes 9 p.m., buying alcohol at these outlets becomes prohibited, effectively putting a stop to late-night alcohol runs. So anyone who hasn't bought their drinks in advance will have to find their way to a restaurant or another licensed establishment to satiate their thirst for beverages of the more robust variety. And Mickey Mouse might be a global superstar, but he wasn't always welcome in Romania. In 1935, the governments banned him from screens, fearing that his big-eared appearance would scare the children. Can you imagine the outrage if that happened today? While it's a funny anecdote in Mickey Mouse's history now, it actually highlights how cultural perceptions can differ, even when it comes to what most of us see as a beloved cartoon character. One very strange thing about New York is a rule concerning footwear. Famously known as the city that never sleeps, it has some ridiculous ideas when it comes to making yourself comfortable. Apparently you can fall foul of authorities by wearing slippers after 10 p.m. This specific and bizarre law seems to focus on those who venture into, say, Central Park in a pair of fluffy bunny slippers, or whatever your slipper of choice may be. And check out our shoes list for that matter. Speaking of funny shoes, how it applies when you're indoors isn't clear, though the image of a SWAT team crashing through your bedroom window when you're preparing to go to bed is pretty amusing. You may think that a fishing Englishman is free to hold his catch in any way he wants, but you'd be mistaken. Section 32 of the 1986 Salmon Act states that if he handles the salmon in a suspicious manner, he faces prosecution and a fine of up to 800 pounds. And the law doesn't only apply to salmon either. It also covers trout, lampreys, eels, smelt, freshwater fish, and any other species of fish specified for the purpose. All of this sounds extremely specific, except that the legislation doesn't define what a suspicious manner looks like. Flying a kite to the irritation of residents, ringing a doorbell without a lawful excuse, getting drunk at a pub, or having pigs outside your house are also forbidden in England. Yes, you heard that right. Keeping pigs outside your house. Hashtag pigs inside. Believe it or not, in Belarus you get taxed for being unemployed. A recent decree slapped a new charge on those out of work. They have to pay extra for public services like water, heat, and even taking the bus. Yeah, they have to pay extra just for the basics. Supporters say it's a kick in the pants to get job hunting, but critics are very vocal about their dislike of the new rules. I don't know. What do you think? How's someone already financially struggling supposed to manage extra bills on top of their unemployed status? And will this pay-to-be-jobless scheme really push people into jobs or push them deeper into debt? I'm actually a bit torn. In Germany, office workers practically have a legal right to a view of the sky. While there's no explicit law, strict regulations on health, safety, and natural light mean most offices have windows. This prioritization of workers' well-being certainly speaks volumes about the country's commitment to creating healthy and productive workspaces. If you ask me, it might just also explain why Germans are so good at engineering and innovation. All that natural light must be fueling their creativity. It isn't the case now, but there was a time when pinball was a symbol of youthful rebellion. These days, kids are busy collecting Pokemon and expressing their freedom that way. However, nothing says a good time to me more than a spring-loaded metal ball firing back and forth on a classic pinball table. You get nothing? Nothing does? Nothing says a good time more? Okay. You get a lot of them based on popular franchises, like this cool example from the Avengers. So this next law seems even more ridiculous in that context. South Carolina bars you from playing pinball if you're under 18. That is utterly ridiculous. The thing with the bouncing balls and the flashing lights and crazy noises is inappropriate, but playing video games where you shoot up people for hours is perfectly fine. Make it make sense. Consider yourself warned if your party trick involves crushing beer cans with your breasts. That does not go down well in the land down under. In 2007, a barmaid was found in violation of the Liquor Control Act and fined 1,000 Australian dollars for entertaining her patrons in said way. The manager of the establishment received a fine as well. Authorities declared their intention to clamp down hard on this type of behavior, saying it sends a clear message to all licensees that such behavior would not be tolerated. The barmaid, who was allegedly forced to work underground following her arrest, was also seen crushing a beer can with her buttocks and dangling spoons from her nipples. For some reason, the barmaid declined to appear in court in person. What? The John Lennon Wall in Prague embodies youth, rebellion, and free speech, and it's adorned with colorful expressions and artwork. It emerged in 1980, following the death of John Lennon. This tribute to free expression, however, comes with an unusual caveat. Any graffiti, regardless of size, is illegal. This rule, contradictory to the wall's essence, creates a fascinating paradox. The law's vagueness complicates matters even more. There's no clear boundary defining the wall's borders, leaving visitors in the dark. Even a small inscription could land you in legal trouble, alongside up to a year in prison. In Morocco, it's best to keep your royal opinions to yourself. Criticizing, mocking, or even speaking ill of the Moroccan king or royal family is a big no-no. In fact, it's illegal under the country's lèse-majesté laws. So if you're planning a trip to this North African nation, it might be better to keep your thoughts on the monarchy strictly private. Otherwise, you could find yourself facing jail time for nothing more than making the mistake of expressing your opinion. Here's one more reason to hate Vladimir Putin. You're not allowed to wear sexy undies in Russia. The saucy yet silly law was reported on in 2014 with Belarus and Kazakhstan getting in on the act. In fairness, this isn't an attempt to crack down on intimate business. The rule is actually related to personal hygiene and what the items are made out of. 6% of cotton or more is apparently enough to let your private regions breathe and avoid the risk of irritation and such. That's where the stats on lingerie come tumbling down, so to speak. Many of these contain less than the recommended amount, and the ruling hasn't gone down well with lacy underwear-loving sections of the population. Imagine if your government suddenly stuck its nose into your personal space like this. Everyone loves a good smile. Smiling promotes the release of endorphins, other natural painkillers, and serotonin. These brain chemicals, when combined, make us feel good from head to toe. But what if there were rules on when you could actually do it? Does that sound crazy? Well, hold on to your butts. It is illegal for North Koreans to smile on July 8th, the anniversary of Kim Il-sung's death. If citizens violate this law, they could end up in concentration camps or be executed. The same applies to being loud, drinking, or throwing a birthday party. So whatever you do on July 8th, if you're in North Korea, don't smile. Or just don't be in North Korea. That's good advice. That's PSA. Don't be in North Korea. We have a couple views from North Korea, so if you're watching this and you're in North Korea, get out. Run. Try. It's gonna be difficult. Use that tunnel. I was in that tunnel. Use that tunnel. Can you imagine taking a nap in a park and waking up to a fine? That's what could happen under a proposed law update in Croatia. Sleeping in public places, even if you snore loudly, doubling the amount, will see you fined. And forget catching some vitamin D on your own balcony. That's also forbidden and could come with jail time. But here's the twist. Supplying alcohol to a minor, a serious offense in many countries, is treated rather lightly in Croatia, and perpetrators come off relatively scot-free. Should you ever decide to visit Tunisia, and if you're a Star Wars fan, yeah you should, you may be surprised to learn that you're not allowed to bring Tunisian dinars into or out of the country. So if you're the kind of traveler who prefers cold hard cash over plastic, you'll need to play by a different set of rules here. Exchange your money for the local currency as you go, and make sure to spend it all before you leave. Otherwise, you'll find yourself in a sticky situation with the authorities. Images of politicians taking a nap in Britain's Houses of Parliament are freely available. In some cases, they look so comfortable they might conceivably be dead, which amazingly leads to a brain-boggling legal tangle. In a ridiculous turn of events that could only happen in an ancient institution like this, passing away in Parliament can be classified as breaking the law. The history books reportedly imply that a state funeral is needed for someone who slips off his mortal coil whilst listening to a debate about scones or whatever. Now, if you think this law sounds a teensy bit too ridiculous, you'd be right. Some have pointed out that prosecuting someone who requires a Ouija board to enter a plea isn't a great way to spend taxpayer money. Nevertheless, it shows how the older the law can be, the wilder things get for us hundreds of years later. As it turns out, some people have a thing for naked hiking. Yeah, naked hiking. It became such a problem in Switzerland that voters in Appenzell-Innerrhoden in the Swiss Alps voted to ban nude hiking in 2009. The problem arose, no pun intended, due to a sudden influx of naked hikers from Germany. Swiss residents going about their regular lives objected to seeing walkers wearing nothing but sturdy hiking boots and a smile. Apparently, German vacation websites promoted these naked hikes as a special and free experience of nature. Well, not that special to the poor unsuspecting Swiss, and that freedom now comes at a hefty price. The Swiss government has imposed substantial fines for anyone wandering around au naturel. Naked walkers have contested the verdict. However, the Swiss High Court concluded that the government has the authority to uphold public decency. So yes, dear Germans, Shorts, please. Or at least a Speedo. Before going for a drive in Bulgaria, you should know there are stricter safety regulations than you might be used to. Every car must have a mandatory emergency kit, including a first aid kit, reflective jacket, and warning triangle. Every car must also have a fire extinguisher, leaving no excuses for unpredictable emergencies. Alcohol, the common pitfall on vacation, is also dealt with swiftly. A zero-tolerance blood alcohol limit of 0.05% means that even a single celebratory toast can trigger costly consequences of not only a sizable fine, but potentially a 6-month to 1-year license suspension. You know, I have no issues with that. Nobody should ever drink and drive. Nestled in the heart of the Balkans, Montenegro is a feast of visual eye candy full of stunning coastlines, rugged mountains, and charming historic towns. The small country has it all: hot and dry summers, mild, rainy winters, and even snowy mountain peaks. However, before you set off on a Montenegrin adventure, know that there is one crucial traffic law. Always keep your headlights on. The diverse terrain and varying weather conditions often create visibility challenges. By keeping your headlights on, drivers play a massive role in ensuring safer roads. Across the English Channel in France, the Republic is in a strange situation. Despite not having a monarch since the late 19th century, the kings and queens still have a surprising amount of influence on the population. Take the Palace of Versailles. This beautiful structure is a feast for the eyes. But there's a catch. If you're in the former king's bedroom and you happen to see a light shining out of the window, it's grounds for prosecution. Not only that, but you can't put a light on within 5 kilometers of the royal glass. To give you an idea of how ridiculous that is, it means that the nearby football team doesn't use the floodlights on its pitch and can't play high-profile games. Can you imagine if there were a rule like that in America? That would bring down the government faster than anything in history. And if you were angry about this, you haven't seen anything yet. Our number 1 spot is taken by something so ridiculous, so crazy, so wild, that you can only cry out with the injustice of it all. Take a deep breath, because this law is cold. And I mean really cold. This item on today's list was an eye-opener. Honestly, I can never figure out why some European men insist on wearing Speedos. However, after our recent research, things have cleared up quite a bit, perception-wise. Did you know men can only wear extremely tight-fitting swimming trunks at any public swimming pool in France? In fact, should you try to jump into the pool in your shorts, you will be rescued by a lifeguard or yanked out by a giant hook. The rule is said to be in the interest of hygiene. Although the tight little briefs aren't very flattering, the law has yet to be repealed even after being reviewed by the French Parliament multiple times and is still strictly enforced today. So, what happens if you find yourself hot and sweaty in France and don't have the proper teeny tiny swimwear? Well, it's easy. Most public pools have vending machines where you can buy your tiny swimwear in any pattern or color you desire. In Bhutan, majestic peaks aren't mere trophies to snag, but sacred homes to gods and spirits, fiercely protecting the country's heart and soul. Climbing expeditions above 6,000 meters, 19,685 feet, are a resounding no-go. This unwavering reverence has preserved the country's crown jewel, Gangkhar Puensum, the world's highest unclimbed slope, a stunning monument to Bhutan's dedication to its spiritual and natural heritage. For the final item on today's list, I thought we'd take a look at the messy world of divorce laws in Yemen. And let me tell you, it's not pretty. Here, a husband can say, "I divorce you" 3 times and boom, it's over. Just like that. Meanwhile, a woman who wants out of her marriage, well, she faces a whole different story. It's a long, drawn-out legal battle, and even then, the odds are stacked against her. It's a system that gives men all the power and leaves women vulnerable and marginalized. So, the next time you hear someone talk about progress and equality, maybe remind them that in places like Yemen, there's still a long way to go. And for the women caught in this archaic system, the fight for justice continues. What kind of sick society prevents its people from enjoying a bowl of ice cream? If you're walking around New Jersey and it's after 6 p.m. and you have a hankering for a double chocolate chip or salted caramel scoop, forget it. The authorities have decided you will not be enjoying that sweet treat. It doesn't appear to be a crime across the whole state, just in Newark. And there's a silver lining in that you can grab an ice cream if you have a note from your doctor. That's a double-edged sword, though, isn't it? What kind of doctor is going to give you permission to eat ice cream? Still, a win is a win, I guess. You might be surprised to hear that we have a complete set of laws, rules, and regulations should the aliens ever arrive. An article published in 1953 by Andrew Haley, a U.S. attorney and vice president of the International Astronautical Federation, promoted the idea that aliens should be treated the same as anyone, regardless of their nationality. The concept of expanding the Golden Rule to include alien life was called meta-law. Ernst Fasan, an Austrian lawyer, further expanded on meta-law. He expanded the notion to include 3 fundamental rules. 1. No person should ever harm an alien. 2. We are all equals. And 3. We have to acknowledge the aliens' will to live and provide them with a safe and secure location in which to do so. In other words, don't pull a Will Smith and punch them in the face. That was actually an Independence Day reference and not, In Bangladesh, students as young as 14 can go to jail for up to 3 years if they're found cheating on their final exams. I kid you not. Because of the country's emphasis on educational standards and incredibly high-stakes exams, they are extremely tough on academic dishonesty, which I think is a good thing. However, the long-term consequences of teen imprisonment raise concerns about proportionality and the potential negative impact on Bangladesh's youth. While academic integrity is unquestionably important, critics argue that extreme measures may be counterproductive, driving students into even more desperate behaviors or harming their mental health.